There have been big changes at Irizar UK, moving from Worksop to Blythe Services and installing a new Managing Director, Andrew Blundell. I'm Mark Williams. I went to meet him and find out what Irizar has in store for us. You had a bit of a baptism of fire coming into Irizar, didn't you, this year? So tell me a bit about that.
I did indeed, Mike. Yeah, definitely a baptism of fire. So I started 2nd or 3rd of March or thereabouts, and literally 10 days in, and just about everything in the industry changed. So as you can imagine, it was very difficult times, completely unprecedented. So I was probably about 10 days into my induction. I was actually over at the factory in Spain, and I think because Spain was something like 2 weeks ahead of us in terms of the outbreak of the pandemic, we could almost see this happening, and so it was quite keen to get back over here, and then week 3 in the business, we were then sort of starting to make decisions about people, some of whom I hadn't even met. So it was very, very strange. But we got through that with the support of the management team that I have. You can imagine, on a personal basis, coming into a new job in a new industry, very, very keen to sort of make my mark, make my impression, make an impact, etc. And I kind of felt as though the foundations changed. But I think we've done okay. I think it's through adopting some basic principles around communication, thinking about people, doing the right thing by people. Hopefully we've got the team through the last few months in a comparatively unscathed fashion. But yeah, on a personal basis, very, very unusual start to a new job and a new position as MD. But,
and very much a new job as well. Remind us of where you came from and what
that
was like.
aside from 3 years as ops director of the Alpha travel business, the majority of the last 20 years or so has been spent within the logistics industry. So I've been with various big names such as Norbert Donsongo, etc. So in that kind of trucks and sheds industry, predominantly as an operator.
And so this is a bit of a shift in emphasis then.
Certainly is.
And what are the main differences that you've seen since you've been in post in this industry versus the industries you've worked in before?
Yeah, so I think, with no disrespect meant to anybody in the industry, it's got the feel more of a cottage industry. There's not many very big operators out there. There's an awful lot still of family-orientated businesses, and the coach industry has got a very different tone about it, a very different feel about it. I think the logistics sector can be a little bit faceless, it's a little bit corporate. I think particularly when you're in one of the much bigger organisations. So far, my experience of the coach industry is it's a far more personable industry. People do business with people in this industry, and that's part of the attraction, actually, that you're not just a faceless corporate, you are actually a person in the industry.
So Andrew, we're now at the new Irizar headquarters at Junction 34 off the A1M at Blythe Services. At the moment you've got a porter cabin here, you've brought all the vehicles up. Can you tell us what the future looks like on this site?
Yes, so obviously we're now sat in what we're now going to refer to as our new National Sales Centre. This site was actually purchased by Irizar quite a few years ago now, with the strategic intent of developing it into a full-on sales and service centre. Obviously we've had a number of major events in the interim, essentially Brexit, and then obviously the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has somewhat dented the timetable. However, we were very, very keen to move on to site in some capacity, just to give us a bit of a sense of a home, and it was particularly important to get all the stock onto the one site. So even in February, March, as the pandemic was developing, we took the decision to press ahead with what can only be regarded as the first phase, and that's actually to get the stock on site and to develop a sales centre. And as it's turned out, I think that's very consistent with the tone that we've tried to adopt in the industry of actually trying to stand alongside operators. And we just felt it would be inappropriate anyway to build a big showcase site at this stage. But this is a sign of intent and a sign of confidence for Irizar. We will survive this turbulence that we're in at the moment, and all things being equal, this site will continue to develop into the strategic showcase that we intended.
Yeah. Tell me what's happening in Spain at the moment, because obviously Irizar's a global business with headquartered in Spain. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're privy to the Spanish figures and how that business is going, but sure. Perhaps you could just tell us how that's going.
Sure. Yeah. Well, obviously, with it being August, the majority of Spain are on the beach at the moment.
Yeah.
But no, it's safe to say that the demand for vehicles from every market that Irizar operates in has diminished significantly since March onwards, and that's consequently had a knock-on at the factory. So the volume of production has been managed down, and the factory has not been producing anywhere near as many vehicles as it would do in the normal course of events. The factory extended the summer shutdown. It normally shuts for a month. I think they extended that to 6 weeks, I think. They do have some orders to get the factory operating again for mid-September. The immediate future will very much depend on what the demand for vehicles are. The capacity is there. If the demand comes back, the factory is available to get those vehicles manufactured. Obviously, the executive team in the business are exploring all different options, all different scenarios as to how this might pan out. But it's safe to say that it's such an unknown situation that we just have to prepare for numerous different scenarios and numerous different options. But having said all that, although there's short-term turbulence in the whole industry, there is a degree of resilient confidence, and the Irizar business will undoubtedly come through this, and I actually think in the fullness of time we'll be seen to be all the stronger for it, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Some rationalisation, some changes, I guess, will go on in the interim, as they will have to in every business.
Very much so. I mean, cost management in any business is imperative, and obviously during a time when the income stream is somewhat challenged, cost control, cost management becomes even more important. So everybody within the business, be that at the factory, be that within the Spanish headquarters, be that over here in the Irizar UK business, we're taking sensible and pragmatic steps to ensure that we manage and control the cost base of the business, which essentially buys everyone time, and then hopefully the market picks up.
Yeah, indeed. Well, there's no crystal ball, obviously, for the market returning to the UK.
No.
But we are seeing tendrils of recovery. People do seem to be wanting to get on coaches again.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's a portent of a decent amount of recovery in the run up to Christmas.
Yeah.
Do you think, as your business, I mean, clearly now you've been in it a little while, you've probably got a bit more of a feel for the coach business. Is there anything that you feel that the government could contribute to the recovery of coach businesses?
Yeah, very much so. I'm a very strong advocate of a scrappage scheme.
Yeah.
When you look at the portfolio of vehicles that are still out there, there's many older Euro 3, Euro 4 vehicles.
Yeah.
Many of which get naturally cascaded down from first line operation down perhaps to the home to school market. So the perverse situation is you perhaps have the oldest, most unenvironmentally friendly vehicles operating in some of the more sensitive environments.
Yeah.
I actually think a scrappage scheme from a government perspective would have very tangible environmental benefits on the back of it.
Yeah.
And also it would stimulate an industry. It would stimulate demand in the industry. So I think government could significantly help the industry with something tangible on the back of it as that also.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can see the same as well. They're having some problems now implementing emissions zones around British cities and actually having those vehicles elsewhere. out of the industry would probably be beneficial.
Very much so. And when you think about this from a coach operator's perspective, the environmental objectives, the environmental agenda is admirable, and I think I'm not undermining that in any way, shape or form. But invariably, this comes down to the family operator who then has to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds to buy a vehicle which complies to Euro 6 emissions standards in order to gain access into many of these urban areas. And on the back of a very difficult time for them commercially, it's a big ask. It's a big ask, and I think any kind of support the government could give to help that transition would help massively.
Yeah, indeed. And of course, it's my reading of the vehicle park at the moment that we probably have a few too many used vehicles. Would that be the case?
Very much so. I think it comes down to simple economics. I think the demand and the supply has got completely out of sync. When you look back over the last few months and you've got significant big operators, Shearings, for example, going out of business, that puts an awful lot of vehicles onto the market. I mean, I think just from those two operators, or that same family of operators, something to the order of 240 vehicles came onto the market. That changes the dynamic massively. And unfortunately, it comes at a time, obviously, when not many operators are buying anyway, because they're in uncertain commercial times anyway. So residual values have depreciated massively. And it's exacerbated with a couple of our competitors going out of business or needing to take steps to survive, etc. We've taken a very strategic view that we're not prepared to sell a vehicle at any price, because all that does, that actually destroys the value of the vehicle for every operator. So we're trying to maintain sensible pricing. If anybody out there, and we've seen a number of examples of this, if any operator is interested in a vehicle, we're taking the approach of having sensible conversations and coming to a sensible price point. We're not just having a fire sale.
Yeah, indeed. And so in the yard, which we'll see in a minute, you've got roughly half and half used vehicles and new, lots of new Irizar product.
Sure.
I understand some of it wheelchair accessible.
Yes.
And of course a used stock as well. I believe that you're going to do some wheelchair conversions to some of your used stock. Can you explain the rationale behind that?
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. I mean, it seems to be, and I'm no expert on this, but it seems to be that PSVAR has been around for decades.
Yes, indeed.
But it seems to be in the last 6 to 9 months that it's come to a bit of a head. And based on the feedback I'm getting from my sales team, just about every conversation that they're having at the moment is orientated around PSVAR. So, operators are now obviously thinking ahead and ensuring that any potential acquisition is going to be PSVAR compliant. And set against what we've just said in terms of the number of second-hand vehicles on the market, there's an obvious opportunity for us to convert some of those previously owned vehicles to meet PSVAR standards. And we've actually got the first vehicle with a converter at the moment. Our hope and expectation is that that vehicle will become an attractive proposition, and if we are able to sell that vehicle within a suitable time frame at a suitable price, we have a program that we can press the button on where we will commit to a program of conversions for a number of our second-hand vehicles.
Yeah, and that'll presumably just future-proof those vehicles to some extent, so that they'll be able to be used across a range of different applications in people's fleet. Is that the belief, the rationale? Very much so.
To a certain extent, it breaks my heart that as I go outside and go on board some of these second-hand vehicles, when you actually get on them, they are very good vehicles. They're in pristine condition. They will do a job for somebody, and just to see them standing idle and to have this stigma on them that they're not fit for purpose, they very much are. They very, very much are. So we actually feel that the PSVAR conversion program will future-proof the operation of that vehicle and make them attractive to an operator who can then deploy those vehicles on a multitude of different jobs, be it the home to school or private hires, etc.
Yeah, indeed, because the ones that you are converting, I think it's fair to say, aren't elderly vehicles. They're very much in their second life, and well up to touring spec.
Very much so.
And so presumably, even with the wheelchair lift conversion, that'll be subtle enough that you'll be able to continue to tour with them and then cascade them down the fleet into schools, should that be the requirement for those vehicles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's many operators out there who need a vehicle that ticks many different boxes. I don't think there's that many people who just operate in a single sector.
Yeah.
So operators need a vehicle which can do home to school, it can do touring, it can do private hire, etc.
And of course rail replacement.
And the rail replacement
increasingly
activity,
they're
very
asking
much so.
for wheelchair accessibility.
Indeed, yes.